Picture ancient Egypt in your head. Go on. You've already got it wrong. Whatever you just pictured, you crammed it all into one blurry, really long time ago. Pyramids, mummies, golden masks, Cleopatra, all sort of happening at the same dusty afternoon. Here's the thing your brain refuses to believe. Cleopatra, the Cleopatra, the one with Caesar and the snake, lived closer in time to you sitting there with your phone than she lived to the building of the Great Pyramid. That's not a rounding error. When Cleopatra looked at the pyramids, they were already older to her than she is to us. She was a tourist. She'd have needed a guidebook. The pyramids were ancient ruins to a woman we call ancient. So ancient Egypt isn't a moment. It's a story so long that the woman at the end of it could barely understand the people at the beginning. And while those people at the beginning were dragging stone up a ramp, there were still woolly mammoths alive on a frozen island up north. Actual mammoths. Same planet, same century. The whole story starts with one river, a river unlike any other on the planet. The Nile floods on a schedule. Like clockwork, every summer, it swells up and spills over its banks. And when it pulls back, it leaves behind this layer of thick black mud that is basically free, premium-grade fertilizer dumped on your doorstep once a year by the universe. You don't fight this river. You plant in the mud. You grow more food than you could possibly eat, and you get rich doing almost nothing. Surround that with desert on every side so nobody can easily invade you, and congratulations, you've got the richest, comfiest patch of land in the ancient world. The Egyptians basically won the geography lottery, and they knew it. So people settle along the river, and over time they sort themselves into two kingdoms, Upper Egypt in the south, Lower Egypt in the north. And yes, that's backwards. The south is upper because the river flows up the map toward the sea. So just flip your instincts now and save yourself the headache. Two kingdoms, two kings, and you can tell them apart by their hats, because of course you can. The southern king wears a tall white bowling pin of a crown. The northern king wears a red one with a little curl on it. Rival hats. This is the whole political situation. Tall white hat, flat red hat, glaring at each other across a river. And then, around 5,000 years ago, one guy ends it. We mostly call him Narmer. He comes up from the south, conquers the north, and unites the whole thing into one kingdom under one king. And his big symbolic move, the thing he does to say, "It's all mine now," is he takes the two crowns and jams them together into one absurd double-decker hat. White hat inside the red hat. He's basically wearing both trophies on his head at once. That double crown becomes the symbol of a united Egypt for the next 3,000 years, and it all started as a flex. First pharaoh, first dynasty, the engine's running. Now here's what every single one of these pharaohs cares about, start to finish. They are gods. The Egyptians don't think of the king as a powerful man. They think of him as an actual god walking around in sandals. And gods, it turns out, are terrified of dying. So the number one hobby of basically every pharaoh is figuring out how to not stay dead. And their plan is genuinely a little unhinged. The Egyptians believed that when you die, your soul leaves your body, but it can come back as long as the body is still there and still recognizable. Lose the body, lose the soul, game over forever. So the whole point is to preserve the corpse so well that your soul can find its way back home and you get to live again. Which is why they invented mummification. They pull the organs out, they dry the body in salt for over a month. They wrap it in hundreds of yards of linen and they tuck it away. And they did not stop at people. They mummified cats. They mummified dogs, birds, even crocodiles by the millions, so the dead could have their pets and their snacks ready on the other side. There are animal cemeteries stacked with little wrapped bundles. They wrapped up a god's worth of house cats. And honestly, you can see where the idea came from. They watched a dead, cracked, lifeless landscape come roaring back to life every single year when the river flooded. If the land can die and come back, why not you? But if you're a god king, a nice wrapped body isn't enough. You need a house for the afterlife. A big one. Which brings us to the pyramids, and to a guy who I think about more than is reasonable. His name is Djoser. Back in his day, kings got buried under a low, flat rectangle of mud brick. One layer. Boring. And Djoser looks at this and goes, one layer? For a god? I don't think so. He's got this brilliant architect named Imhotep, and the order is basically, stack them. So Imhotep stacks 6 of those rectangles on top of each other, smallest on top, and you get the first pyramid in history, the Step Pyramid. The first time a human being decided his tomb should be visible from space-ish. And it works. It's still standing. And it kicks off the most expensive flex contest in human history, because now every pharaoh wants a bigger one. And the part nobody tells you is that they were basically winging it. A king named Sneferu was so determined to get it right that he didn't build 1 pyramid, he built 3, like a man buying draft after draft of his own tomb. The first one started slumping. On the next one, the crew got about halfway up, suddenly panicked that the angle was too steep and the whole thing was going to pancake, and changed the angle mid-build. So to this day, it stands out in the desert visibly bent, a giant stone monument to a construction team going, oh no. He finally nailed it on the 3rd, and his son took all that hard-won, oh no flavored experience and went absolutely enormous. That son was Khufu. Egypt was at the peak of its money and its engineering, and Khufu built the big one, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Around 2.5 million stone blocks, each block averaging about 2.5 tons. The thing he built was the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Nobody beat it until medieval cathedrals. And it's still sitting there, mostly intact, while the rest of human history rose and fell around it. And here's the part everyone gets wrong, including a Greek tourist named Herodotus, who showed up 2,000 years later and basically made it up. He said it was built by 100,000 whipped slaves. It wasn't. We found the workers' town. We found their graves, buried with honor right next to the pyramids, stocked with bread and beer for their own afterlife. You don't bury slaves like that. These were paid workers, fed shockingly well. 21 cattle and 23 sheep a day getting trucked in to feed them. They worked in crews with team names, and the team names are the best thing in all of Egyptology. One gang called themselves the Friends of Khufu. Another gang called themselves the Drunkards of Menkaure. These are construction workers naming their crew. 3 guesses what the drunkards were known for. So the next time a movie shows you slaves dragging stone under a whip, picture instead a sunburnt guy clocking out, getting his bread and beer ration, and high-fiving the rest of the drunkards. And remember, while they were doing this, the very last woolly mammoths were still alive on an island off Siberia. Sickly, inbred, the last of their kind, but alive. The pyramids and the mammoths missed each other by a hair. Khufu's son adds the Sphinx, this giant lion with a king's face, carved out of one massive leftover lump of rock, set out front like a guard dog the size of a building. And for a while, Egypt is just printing monuments. But you cannot do this forever. Building a mountain out of stone for every dead king is the kind of thing that quietly empties a national treasury, and a few centuries in, the bill comes due. The money runs thin, the kings get weaker, and then the climate does the one thing Egypt cannot survive. The Nile stops flooding properly. Drought. Famine. And the pharaoh's whole brand was, I am a god who controls the river. Well, the river's gone, so what exactly are you then? The whole thing falls apart. Power splinters out to local governors all grabbing land, and Egypt cracks into a chaos period so messy that one later text basically describes the country as having a new king every 5 minutes. The first golden age is over. It takes a strong man from the south, a guy named Mentuhotep, to punch the country back together and start the next great era. And this new Egypt has a chip on its shoulder. It remembers being great, and it's determined to be great again. For a while, it works. And then it gets embarrassed in a way Egypt is not used to. A people called the Hyksos come in from the northeast, and they've got a piece of tech Egypt has literally never seen: the horse-drawn chariot. And good bows. Egypt's been sitting safe behind its deserts for 1,000 years, fat and happy. And these guys roll in on fast-moving war platforms and just take the whole northern half of the country. For about a century, foreigners are running Lower Egypt. For a civilization this proud, this is a national humiliation that does not heal. But here's the beautiful irony. Egypt loses to the chariot, so Egypt steals the chariot. They learn it, they get good at it, and a southern prince named Ahmose finally drives the Hyksos out, reunites the country, and uses their own technology to launch Egypt into its biggest, richest, flashiest era ever: the New Kingdom. This is the postcard Egypt. This is the golden age everybody pictures, and it's powered by the war machine of the people who once conquered them. And the first thing this golden age quietly does is give up on pyramids. Because by now everyone's noticed the obvious flaw in a pyramid. It's a 400-foot stone arrow pointing at the ground and screaming, "Rich dead guy, treasure here, please rob." And rob them they did. Every single pyramid got cleaned out. So the New Kingdom kings get sneaky. No more billboards. Instead, they start cutting secret tombs into the cliffs of one hidden valley out in the desert. No monument, no marking, just a hole in the rock crammed with gold. The Valley of the Kings. The high-security vault version of being buried. And it worked about as well as the pyramids did, which is to say, not at all. Robbers found nearly all of them, too. Grave robbing was such reliable money that whole villages went into the family business for generations. Hold on to that, it pays off in a minute. And the New Kingdom gives us the all-stars, the pharaohs you've actually heard of. Start with one nobody expects, because she's a woman, and Egypt does not do female pharaohs. Her name is Hatshepsut. She's supposed to just babysit the throne for her little stepson until he grows up. Instead, she looks around and goes, "You know what? I'll take it." She crowns herself pharaoh. And to sell it to a country that has no concept of a female king, she has herself carved into the temple walls as a man. Broad shoulders, and a fake pharaoh's beard, strapped on, the whole costume. And then she goes and runs one of the most successful, peaceful, rich reigns in Egyptian history for 2 solid decades, trading instead of fighting and building a temple so gorgeous people still gasp at it. Total success. So what's her reward? Years after she dies, her stepson, now in charge, sends crews out with chisels to scratch her name and her face off of everything. Everywhere. Trying to erase her from history like she never existed. And it almost worked. We only know her story because they missed a few spots. The first great female ruler of Egypt, very nearly deleted, surviving on the parts they forgot to scrape. That stepson, by the way, grows up to be a monster on the battlefield. 17 military campaigns, builds the empire out in every direction. People call him the Napoleon of Egypt, so at least the babysitter raised him right. Then you get the weird one, the heretic. His name is Akhenaten, and he wakes up one day and decides he's bored of every god Egypt has ever worshipped. There's a powerful priesthood running the show behind the throne, and Akhenaten basically goes, "New plan, all those gods are canceled. There's one god now, the sun. Just the sun, this glowing disk called the Aten, and only I get to talk to it." He invents what's pretty much the first one-god religion the world had seen. And here's the part that might keep you up tonight. That idea, one single god and no others, dreamed up by a pharaoh almost nobody remembers, may have quietly outlived him in the strangest way. A fair number of historians think Akhenaten's one-god experiment planted a seed that, generations down the line, fed into the God of the Bible. The most influential idea in Western religion, possibly first test-driven by the most hated king in Egypt. He builds an entire brand new capital city from scratch out in the empty desert and makes everyone move there. He changes the art style so everybody in the paintings suddenly has a long, droopy face and a pot-belly, including him. His wife is Nefertiti, the one from the famous bust with the perfect face. And while Akhenaten is busy being a sun-worshipping art revolutionary, he he completely ignores actually running the country, the empire starts slipping, and the second he dies, everyone in Egypt exhales and goes, "Okay, that was insane. Put everything back." They restore the old gods. They abandon his desert city. They chisel him out too, the heretic king, scrubbed from the record. Egypt really had a hobby of deleting its weirdos, and his son cleans up the mess. You know the son. Everybody knows the son. He switches the religion back to normal, and his name, which started as Tutankhaten in honor of Dad's sun god, gets changed to Tutankhamen to honor the old gods again. King Tut, the Golden Boy, the most famous face in all of Egypt. Except, surprise, the Golden Boy was a mess. The gorgeous gold mask hides the fact that the actual kid was a sickly teenager with a clubbed foot who needed a cane to walk. We found over 100 walking sticks in his tomb. He had a cleft palate, he caught malaria, and his parents, this is the New Kingdom royal family for you, were full brother and sister. The inbreeding wrecked him. He died at around 18, having done almost nothing of note except flip the religion back. So why is he the most famous pharaoh who ever lived? Pure dumb luck. He was such a minor king that everyone forgot where he was buried, so grave robbers never found him. So when an archaeologist named Howard Carter cracked open the tomb in 1922, it was still stuffed with untouched treasure. The least important king in the room is world famous today purely because nobody bothered to rob him. History's funny like that. And then comes the ego. Ramesses II, Ramses the Great, and he made very sure you'd call him that. This man ruled for 66 years, lived to around 90, and fathered something like 100 children. He plastered giant statues of himself across the entire country. At Abu Simbel, he carved 4 versions of himself into a cliff, each one taller than a house, just so everyone sailing past would have to look up at 4 enormous Ramesses. And inside, he went further than any pharaoh had dared. He had himself carved sitting shoulder to shoulder with the actual gods as one of them, and set up his own worship while he was still alive and breathing. Not pray for me when I'm gone, pray to me now, I'm right here. And then there's Kadesh. Ramses marches off to fight the Hittites, the new big rival up north, at a city called Kadesh, which was basically the trade route jackpot everyone in the region wanted to own, in one of the largest chariot battles ever fought. And the result is, honestly, a draw. He doesn't take the city. He goes home empty-handed. So what does he do? He goes back to Egypt and carves, onto temple after temple after temple, the story of how he personally, single-handedly, destroyed thousands of enemies and won the greatest victory of all time. Ancient propaganda. Ancient fake news, chiseled in stone. And it worked for 3,000 years, until we dug up the Hittite side of the story and found out they thought they'd done pretty well too. The same Ramses, to his credit, also signed what's the oldest surviving peace treaty we've ever found. So the guy who lied about the war also formally ended it. Both things, same king. And Ramses is the peak. After him, it's a long, slow slide downhill, and the slide is brutal. Mysterious raiders from the seas start hammering the coast right as the whole Bronze Age world is collapsing. And nobody, to this day, is really sure who these sea people even were. We just know they erased entire civilizations off the map, including the Hittites. That exact superpower Ramses had fought to a standstill. Just gone, wiped out by these guys. Egypt barely fights them off and burns through its money and its strength doing it. The kings get weak, the priests grab the power, the country splinters again. And now the predators smell blood. Everybody gets a turn invading Egypt. First, the kingdom of Kush from down south marches in and takes over. And for a stretch, Egypt is ruled by black pharaohs out of Nubia, wearing that same double crown. Then the Assyrians come smashing in from the Middle East. Then the Persians, the absolute superpower of the day, just walk in and make Egypt a province. The land that used to be the richest, proudest, most untouchable place on earth is now somebody's colony, getting passed around like a trophy. And then the plot twist nobody saw coming. Alexander the Great. He's tearing through the entire Persian Empire, and Egypt's part of Persia now. So he rolls in, kicks the Persians out, and the Egyptians basically throw him a parade because anyone's better than the Persians. He founds a city on the coast and names it after himself, Alexandria. And under the Greeks, who came after him, it grows into the closest thing the ancient world had to a modern megacity, crowned by a lighthouse so colossal it got counted as one of the 7 wonders of the world, and home to the most famous library in history, the Library of Alexandria, the one everybody's still heartbroken about losing. For a few hundred years, Alexandria is simply where the smartest people on Earth went to think. Then he dies young. His empire gets carved up among his generals, and the general who grabs Egypt is a guy named Ptolemy. And Ptolemy just declares himself pharaoh. So now, sit with this. After 3,000 years of Egyptian god kings, Egypt is being ruled by a Greek guy and his family. And they keep ruling as Greeks for 300 years. They wear the pharaoh costume, they do the pharaoh rituals. But they're Greek. They speak Greek. They barely mingle.
Which finally brings us all the way back to her, Cleopatra, the last pharaoh. And here's the thing the movies never tell you. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian. She was Greek, that same Ptolemy's line, and she was the very first one in 300 years of her own family who even bothered to learn the Egyptian language. She spoke around 9 languages. She was sharp as a blade. And despite the legend, the ancient writers say it wasn't really her looks. It was her charm, her voice, her brain. She could talk anyone into anything. And she needed to, because she was losing a power struggle to her own little brother. So, when the most powerful man in the world, Julius Caesar, shows up in Egypt, she has herself smuggled past the guards and into his quarters. Not rolled in a carpet, that's Hollywood. The old account says she was hidden in a sack of bedding, hauled in over a servant's shoulder and tipped out at Caesar's feet. And it worked. She wins Caesar over completely, has his son, climbs back to the top. Then Caesar gets stabbed to death in Rome, and she has to find a new horse to bet on. So she picks the next big Roman strongman, Mark Antony, and wins him over too, the same way. But she bet wrong. Antony's rival, a cold young Roman named Octavian, beats their combined fleet at a sea battle called Actium. Antony and Cleopatra flee home to Egypt with nowhere left to run. Antony kills himself. And Cleopatra, refusing to be dragged through the streets of Rome as a trophy, takes her own life. The legend says she did it with the bite of a venomous snake, an asp, supposedly snuck to her in a basket of figs. And if that's true, she'd done her homework because the story goes she had spent time quietly testing poisons on condemned prisoners, working out which death came fastest and hurt least. If she was going out, she was going out on her own terms, painlessly, and not 1 inch on Octavian's. Modern historians lean toward poison, and the snake might just be a story Octavian spread to paint her as the exotic foreign temptress. Either way, the last pharaoh of Egypt is dead. Her son, by Caesar, is hunted down and killed. And just like that, after 3,000 years, there are no more pharaohs. Egypt becomes a Roman province, its endless wealth flowing straight into Rome. Rome turned it into its personal breadbasket, squeezing it for grain for centuries. The old gods faded as Christianity spread. Then Islam arrived in the 600s, and Arabic became the language. And the old pharaonic world, the gods, the rituals, the way of reading those picture writings, all of it went quiet for over 1,000 years, until archaeologists cracked it back open. Empires kept trading the place around, Ottomans, then the British, until Egypt finally became independent again in 1922. The same year, by total coincidence, that we found King Tut. And one last thing, because Ramesses the Great would never let us end without him. In 1976, his 3,000-year-old mummy got flown to Paris for repairs. And France has a law that everyone entering the country needs a passport. Everyone, including a dead pharaoh. So the Egyptian government issued Ramesses II an actual modern passport with his photo. And under occupation it said, King, deceased.
and when his mummy landed in Paris, they gave it a full military honor guard at the airport, like a visiting head of state. 3,000 years dead, and the man still travels like a king. Some egos just refuse to be forgotten.